Hey, my name is Annie Björkström. I am a tech consultant based in Stockholm, and in this video I will show you how to use SORA2 in n8n, and you will get this template for free. Just comment down below n8n and you will get a link that you can use to download this template for free. So the first module that we have in our workflow is schedule trigger. If we double click on schedule trigger, we can see that here I specified trigger interval, and there you can see days, which means that this interval is days for the trigger to be fired. And then you can see that we will have it running daily, so there will be only one day between days. And also we defined that the time should be 11 o'clock. And if you like, you can even specify trigger at minute, which means that, for example, if you want to run this at 11, then you will just write 30 here. So it will be 11 a.m. and then 30 minutes. And of course, you can change this. You can have, for example, hours if you want to create videos on hourly basis, or weeks if you want just to create one video per week, or months. So it's up to you. Then in the next step, we have edit fields. And what we do basically here is that we are creating variables. And if you don't know what is a variable, no worries. You are just specifying, for example, different fields. The first field is what is your idea, and the general idea, what you want your videos to be about. For me, it's stories about a little cat, and so that's why I specified that my general idea should be about little cat. Then sample prompt. This will be a prompt that you will just give as a sample to your AI agent. Then you have aspect ratio. So here I have 9:16 because I want to create shorts for YouTube, but it's up to you. You can just define the aspect ratio that you would like to define. And the number of videos, the idea for me is that I will create one video every time this workflow is fired. So that's why I have just one here. And also, you can see that as any other action or module in n8n, we have input section and we have output section. So input section is everything that we get from the action that was before edit field. So that was a schedule trigger for us, and we can see that it was scheduled on 12th of October. You can see the time, and then you can see, for example, day of the week. It was Sunday, and the year, and all of this information that is coming as input for our current edit field module. And then we have the output, and the output is what edit field is putting out after it was executed. So then it is those values that we are specifying in this edit field action. So we have the idea that we specified here, sample prompt that we specified in edit fields, and then aspect ratio, of course, and the number of videos. That's it. And then in the next step, what we will do, we will define an AI agent. And if I double click on this, you can see that it's just a general AI agent in n8n. And here again, as an input field, we have everything that we specified in edit field action. And what we are doing here, we are defining user message or prompt, and we are defining system message in order to understand what exactly is user message. So it is, for example, if you log in into ChatGPT, Cloud, Perplexity, and you write a prompt, then that is the prompt that we will insert in here. And everything that is in system messages, this is like a setup that is sent to your LLM before the prompt. So here we specify general setup for your LLM. And if I try to, you can see that what I'm doing here, I am saying ask and then suggest detailed video prompts based on the user's input. Then I have guidelines. Under that, I have examples. So I'm giving an example to LLM so that it will create needed output. Then I have notations, how the output needs to look like, because I want it to be a JSON. And then after that, I'm even giving a tool. So I'm saying that think tool, and I'm giving it a memory to think a bit harder. Then I'm giving even a Google Sheet that my LLM needs to use to see what are the other ideas that it created before in order not to repeat the same idea and the same prompt for the video again. So that's basically what we specify in system message. And then we have also a user message, and here you can see that I'm using our input parameters. So I say give the number of videos, video idea about, and then there I'm specifying the idea that we define. And then after that, I'm specifying the aspect ratio. So it is basically referring the aspect ratio that we specified in edit field. So all of those, for example, aspect ratio, this is like a variable. You drag and drop it in here. The same with number of videos. Just drag and drop it in here. You don't need to write this JSON code. It's just drag and drop it. And that's it, basically. Your AI agent is created, at least for this part. And then if we come out of that, you can see that I gave a brain to our AI agent. You can choose the LLM that you like. If you have access to Perplexity or ChatGPT, just use that one. And then you will specify credential to connect with. So this will be basically your API key for the platform. Next, what I'm doing in here, I gave my AI agent memory. Is the name of this in n8n is think. And then after that, you can see that I have another tool, which is Google Sheets. And here you can see the Google Sheet that I am attaching to our AI agent. And here you can see that in my Google Sheet, I have title, caption, video prompt. And if I scroll a bit more, you can see that even have aspect ratio. And the idea with this is our AI agent will look into this Google Sheet, will see all the other titles and prompts for the previous video ideas, and will not create the same video idea about our sweet cut. That's why we are specifying this as a tool. Then in the next step, I'm specifying also a parser, and because the reason that I do this is because I want to specify in which format should the output be. And you can see that input was already more or less good format, but I'm still specifying that output needs to be exactly in this format. So it needs to have a title, caption, prompt, aspect ratio. And you might ask why it is so important to have this in this certain format and why should I have JSON? The reason that we need this because later on we will send this information to SORA2 API, and SORA2 API is accepting input in a certain format, and this is the format that SORA2 is accepting. If we send in other format, then it will not understand and it will not create a video. So that's the reason. If I double click on that, I would like to show this for you. So you can see that what we do in the credentials section, we are specifying our credentials. And if you don't create your credentials yet, then you just click on this pen button. So here you can see all the credentials that I specified, and you might be asking how should you fix this. Console, cloud, google.com. And from there, actually, the first thing is that you will choose APIs and services and then enable APIs and services. And you come here is because you need to enable your API for Google Sheet. So this is the API. If I click on this, so the option that I can choose here is disable. If it's not enabled, then you need to come here in order to be able to use Google Sheet programmatically or via API. And then once you do that, the next step is that you will go to credentials. And once you are in credentials, then you will create credentials. And from there, you will choose OAuth client ID. And then from here, application type will be web application. And then you will just click on create. And once you create this, you can see your client ID and client secret, and that is exactly what you will be using in your n8n. And this information is confidential, so you don't need to share this with somebody else. That's how you will create your Google Sheet account credentials. So you will fill in all of redirect URL and then client ID, client secret, and that's it. And after that, you have tool description that will be set automatically, and then resources will be sheet within documents, and then operation will be append row, because in your Google Sheet you will append row or your information which is the title and caption and video prompt, that will be saved as a new row. So that's why you choose append row. Then here is the name of your Google Sheet, and then you are also saying that in my Google Sheet, choose the first sheet. And this is, you can see sheet number 1. You can have many different sheets, but we are specifying that it needs to choose the sheet 1. Again, if we come back, then you can see that I'm doing manual mapping, and you can see that I have mapped my title from input. So here you have the title, for example, to my Google Sheet, and you can also see that the aspect ratio, I'm mapping that one. And why I not mapping the captions or the title actually and captions is enough to see if this video already exists in that Google Sheet or not. And in this step, we are just checking to see if this video exists in Google Sheet or not. So that's why we are just mapping those two informations. If we come out of that, then we have split out action module, and here you can see that all videos created, then separate those. And in this case, because in edit field I just choose one video, so there will be one video, so we will have just one output. But if we want to create two videos at once, then we will separate and we will have two items here. The reason that we do that again is because in the next step we do append row in the sheet, and this is the same Google Sheet again from before, and we want basically for every output we want to create a new sheet. That is why we were splitting outputs in the step before. But now if we concentrate on append row in sheet module, so here we can see that we are taking information from split out and we are inserting this information as a new row in our Google Sheet, and we have the title, caption, video, and aspect ratio, and everything will be written for you in this module. If we come out of this, next we will have call Sora sub workflow, and this is another workflow that will be called when append row in sheet is succeeded. And the reason that we do this that way is because we can use the first part of this worksheet with other APIs as well. So we want to separate the part where an API is used so that we can use the first worksheet for different APIs.
Sub workflow, if we double click on the sub workflow, you can see that the only thing sub workflow does, it gets input from the previous workflow and it sends the input to the next node. And here we have video prompt and size. And if we come out of that and we double click to the next node in this workflow, you can see that it is HTTP request node. And here we are using directly OpenAI's API instead of using third-party supplier, for example, Fal.ai or Kai.ai. We are using directly OpenAI's API. And here you can see OpenAI's API documentation. So if you just open platform.openai.com and then go to create video, then you have really nice documentation. So you can see that this is the endpoint that you need to use for post request. And you can basically just copy curl code. And if you go back to n8n, you can just import curl code here. So you can just paste it here and most of the sections will be out of field. But I can show you exactly what we are doing in here. So we have the method that is post, and under that we have the URL, which is the endpoint for creating the video directly via OpenAI's API. And then under that we have authentication, which is generic credential type, and generic auth type, which should be header auth. And then under header auth, we created our credentials. And here, if I, for example, let's say, if I want to show you how to do that, then under the name, you will enter authorization and the value should be barrier. Then there should be space. And then after that will be your API key. And if you go to authentication part of API documentation, you can see that it specifies how exactly authentication should be done. So here you can see that it says that in the header, host is for the header, it should be authorization and then barrier and then the API key. Just remember that in n8n, in the value, you should also have barrier and then space and API key, not only the API key, but barrier, space, API key. And API key you are creating in your OpenAI.com platform. So that's where you will create that. body content type is JSON, and specify body is using JSON. And then this is the content in the body that I'm using. We have the model, we have prompt, seconds, it's 8, which means that video will be 8 seconds, and then the size is the size that is relevant for YouTube Shorts or TikTok. And here you can see I hard-coded that one, but you can even just drag and drop it from the input parameter. So in that case, you will have that as a variable. If I do this, for example, so you can see that now we have that as a variable, and we can just delete this hard-coded part. And then if we go out of this, you can see that the output will be ID, which is the ID of the video that was created. And then status in the beginning will be queued, which means that video is not yet created, but it is standing in the queue. And for that reason, we will create another node that will wait 1 minute. Here, if I open that, you can see that this one will just wait 1 minute until trying to get the video. And the reason that we are waiting instead of just trying to get the status is just to save some computational resources. Of course, we can check the status every second, but if we want to save some computational resources and do not try to check the status every other second, but wait 1 minute and then check, and then wait 1 minute and then check, then we can save some computational resources. And this process in computing is called polling. Then after that, we have our next node, which is called get video. In this section, what we will do, basically, we will check the status. So if we go back to API documentation, here, if we scroll down, you can see we have one section that says retrieve video. And there we are getting the video. You can see that we are sending get request to the endpoint, and you can see that the last part of the endpoint is video ID, and we get video ID when we send our post request to create the video. So if I double click on get video, you can see that this is another HTTP request, and we are sending the get method. Then we can see URL, which is again coming from the documentation, and the ID is just the ID that we got from post request. And then we have the same authentication. So we will use exactly the same authentication. And yes, and then after that, I have the switch node. And the reason I have the switch node is because we can have different outcomes when we try to get the status. For example, we have an outcome where status will be completed. And if we get status completed, then we are ready to get the video. But if the status is not completed, this means that it's still being produced. So then we will go back to our wait node, and we will wait 1 minute, and we will try to get the video again. And then we have a fallback option, and fallback means that none of the options that are above are fulfilled. So it is falling back on the last fallback option. So again, now if we go back from this node, we can see that if there is a fallback option, then we have another node that is called error, and here we are just saving the outcome for logging purposes. But if everything is fine and video was created and the status is success, then we have another node, which is HTTP request, and here we are downloading the video. We are sending the get request, and we are getting the content. So the endpoint will end with content. And again, a question, how do I know that we need to use exactly this endpoint? I will specify that it's coming from the API. So if I scroll down here, the API documentation, you can see that there is retrieve video content, and you can see that it specifies that we need to send get request, and this is the endpoint that we need to use. So that is basically it. And if we run all of this workflow, we will get back the video, and we can save it either locally, or of course you can just directly go ahead and publish it on your social media accounts. So again, this workflow is free. I will send it to you for free. Just comment n8n down below in the comments and like this video. I hope this was helpful. Have a good day. Bye.